I think I've passed at least 2 or 3 prostitutes. Oh look, a potato. Hey, Wonderhussy here. A couple weeks ago, I did a video walking up and down the world famous Las Vegas Strip just to see how things were going down there, what with the pandemic and the economic slowdown. And well, if you watched that video, you saw that things were pretty grim on the Vegas Strip. Well, here I am stuck in Vegas waiting for my car to be worked on. So I thought it might be interesting to go take a walk down the other famous street in Las Vegas, Fremont Street, aka Glitter Gulch, which is in downtown Las Vegas, and it's where all the first casinos and hotels in Las Vegas were built, way before Bugsy Siegel showed up and built the Flamingo. And even if you've never actually been to Fremont Street, you've almost certainly seen it in movies and on TV. Anytime they shoot a scene where they're trying to make it look like they're in Vegas, they usually go down to Fremont Street because that's where all the crazy neon lights are, still to this day. It's basically the iconic Vegas street, and so a lot of people do get it mixed up with the Strip, but they're 2 totally different streets and 2 totally different scenes. See, this right here that we're crossing right now is actually Las Vegas Boulevard. That's the Strip. You can probably see down there the Stratosphere. If you go past that, that goes down to where like Caesar's Palace and all the big hotels that you probably know are. But we're going that way. That's right. Behind Rogue Toys. I'm not really sure what they sell in there, but well, basically this is kind of a colorful part of town. There's a lot of adult stores, pawn shops, bail bonds offices. I mean, this is kind of like, well, I guess the quote-unquote gritty part of Vegas. Now, I should note, if you actually live in Vegas, then you know there's way worse parts of town than where we're going. But for most people who are visiting Vegas, you know, going downtown to Fremont Street is kind of like going to the sketchy part of town. But for many years, it was the main drag in Vegas. In fact, it was laid out in 1905. The year Las Vegas was incorporated as a city, that's right, way back in 1905, 115 years ago. It was also the first paved street in Las Vegas. I think that was in 1925. And then it also had the first traffic light in 1931. But for all that, it's actually not even that long of a street. It starts at the Union Pacific Railroad tracks on the north end, and it only goes 2 miles southeast until it kind of, well, it turns into Boulder Highway at Sahara Avenue. Anyway, since it's only basically 2 miles long, I figure, well, it'll be a super easy walk. I mean, especially considering I live only about a mile and a half from Fremont Street. So I was able to walk from my house. I'm gonna go up to the northern end of Fremont Street by the Union Pacific Railroad tracks. And then I'm gonna walk the entire 2 miles of Fremont Street until it turns into Boulder Highway. And although it's only 2 miles, let me tell you something. It goes through a lot of very interesting changes. Okay, now unfortunately I happen to be shooting this right in the middle of the dang coronavirus pandemic, so I'm gonna have to cover up my purty little mouth. Okay, so the hotel at the beginning of Fremont Street is this one here, the Plaza, the Union Plaza, and it's named that because the Union Pacific Railroad tracks go right behind it. Now, unfortunately, Amtrak discontinued passenger rail service to Las Vegas in, I think, 1997. So now, well, you might be able to see there's just a big old Greyhound bus station here. That Greyhound bus station is one of the most interesting places in Las Vegas to hang out. Because if you think about it, you know, who takes the bus anymore? People fly to Vegas, but hey, let me tell you something. There's a lot of people who still have no other option than to take the bus, and well, I find those to be some of the most interesting people in town. But believe it or not, the Plaza wasn't actually the first hotel here. This was the first hotel. Look at this, the Golden Gate. That's right, their address is #1 Fremont Street because it was the first hotel built here. I think originally it was built in 1905. The very year Las Vegas was incorporated as a city, they had an auction because that was the year. I mean, there had been if you do the research into the history of Las Vegas, there had been a settlement here for years. There was a Mormon fort, and then there's a natural watering hole here, so people would stop here on their way across the desert. But it didn't actually become a city until the railroad announced plans to go through town, and then they divided up all the land into parcels and had this big auction. Well, this was #1 Fremont Street, and this guy, his name was Miller, I think, opened a tent hotel, a hotel made out of tents. Right here, not only is the address #1 Fremont Street, but it had the first phone number when they started the telephone back in the day. It had the first phone number in Las Vegas, and its telephone number was 1. 1! Not 1111111. 1! That's how phone numbers were back in the day. You know, I don't think people had phones. So all you had to do is, I guess, pick up the phone and put 1. The main thing this place is famous for, and you may have actually been here and had this, is a shrimp cocktail. For years, you used to be able to go in here and get a tall glass, like an ice cream sundae glass, full of shrimp and cocktail sauce for, well, at first it was 50 cents, and then they raised the price to 99 cents in like 1991, and then eventually it went all the way up to $1.99, because apparently they were losing like 300 grand a year. 300 grand a year on shrimp. Okay, now we're in the part of Fremont Street that's turned into a pedestrian mall. You can see there's no traffic. It's covered with this light canopy, and there's people flying on these zip lines. Well, guess what? One time a kid was doing that, like a 16-year-old, and he peed all over the people down below on Fremont Street. I mean, it's horrible. I wouldn't have wanted to be one of the people who got pissed on, but I gotta give him credit because it's kind of funny. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to shoot any audio on this part of Fremont Street. Not just because you wouldn't have been able to hear me anyway over the ear-splittingly loud, crappy 80s metal music that was blaring from loudspeakers everywhere, but because it was also copyrighted ear-splittingly loud, crappy 80s metal music, and I'm trying to make a living here. So the last thing I want to do is have to share the revenue I earn from this video with whatever douchebag attorney owns the licensing rights to Whitesnake. Okay, anyway, now we're entering phase 2 of Fremont Street. We just came in from the touristy portion there. That's the Canopy Fremont Street experience. Fremont East District was kind of like this hipster area. You know what I mean by hipsters? It's like all these shishi little bars and places to grab a bite, and everything has these like funky names, and see what I mean? Hipsters. Look at those people. Oh, look, see this? You might have heard of that guy, Tony Shea, that's how it's pronounced. Well, he just died. He was I guess for long story short, he was a rich techie who ended up spending all his money buying up property in downtown Vegas to rebuild it and rejuvenate it. And to be fair, he did do a lot to revitalize this area. I mean, well, Fremont Street over the years had kind of fallen into disrepair. You know, once all the action moved down to the Strip where all the nice hotels were, nobody really came down here anymore, and it became kind of a hotbed for vice. It was known as a place where you could get a prostitute, you know, that kind of thing. In '94, when they closed it off to traffic down there and built that Pedestrian Mall, I guess that cleaned it up a little bit. But where the Pedestrian Mall ended, like this part was pretty rough. I moved here back in 2000, and even then, like, it was kind of rough down here. Personally, I liked it that way, but hey, whatever. Tony Shea bought up a bunch of this property and redeveloped it and turned in all these cute little bars and restaurants. I don't know if he built this high-rise, but he lived there. He had a big penthouse apartment there. Although you might have read in his obituaries, like, he just passed away when I'm making this video. He passed away about a month ago, and there's all these obituaries about him, like, oh, Tony Shea, he was such an eccentric, wealthy man, but he did so much good, and he was so humble, he lived in a trailer park. Well, all of that is technically true, but let me tell you something, it's pretty skewed. Yes, he lived in a trailer park, but I'll show you the trailer park, and it was not what you're thinking of when you think of a trailer park. Okay, this building here, where there's all these well-heeled people having tapas or whatever it is on the patio, it says Emergency Arts. Well, it used to be, I think it was a hospital back in the day, and before that it was like a JCPenney, because this was like the big downtown area of Las Vegas, like the main commercial district. I live a mile from here, so I don't know if this hipster redevelopment has directly impacted my property value, but probably did. So I can't completely bag on Tony Shea and all his big city elitists that came down here. And I mean, this used to be nothing but flophouse motels on this part of Fremont. Just crummy little motels, crummy little casinos, hole in the wall. Like there used to be a really cool hole in the wall kebab restaurant right over there. I think where that stupid burger place is now. Well, guess what? All of that got priced out, bought up. They shoved all the homeless and janky people farther down Fremont Street, where we're going, so you'll see where they are now. Okay, continuing through the hipster portion of Fremont Street, now we come to this thing called the Container Park that was basically built by Tony Shea's project, which was called the Downtown Project. He was really big into Burning Man, Tony Shea was, and so he bought a lot of Burning Man stuff and had it trucked down here, including this giant metal praying mantis that actually belches fire at night. And there's a guy that sits up in there and pulls some chain or something, and big propane poof comes out of its mouth. But yeah, this giant praying mantis sits out in front of this container park, which is, sorry, the sun's right behind it, but it's a little shopping mall that's made out of shipping containers, bunch of overpriced little boutiques. You know what I mean? Like if you get off on going into a shipping container and spending way too much money on a drink, check it out. Okay, now we're getting into the really interesting part of downtown Vegas, in my estimation. Look at this guy passed out on the stoop there. Punk rock, man, whoa. Or how about this guy? Poor guy just ranting and raving to himself. I guess I can kind of understand why a lot of old timers from Vegas that grew up here, you know, back in the day, love to complain about how much better it was back then. And to be honest, I can kind of see why. I mean, it was a much smaller town, and so there weren't as many services and stores, and the airport wasn't as big, but there was way less traffic, crime, and I guess there was more like more of a sense of community in a weird way. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to glamorize it. I know a lot of people who grew up here who go, Vegas was so much better when the mob ran things. And yeah, I'm sure that's true partly for certain people, but let's not forget that the mafia was a bunch of thugs, okay? And if you didn't toe the line, they'd dump you out in the desert, you know, kill you, throw you in Lake Mead. So I'm not trying to be one of those people who glamorizes the old days. All these old hotels used to be hotels, and now they've been bought up, and I guess they were going to turn them into condos or art spaces or who knows what. Oh, look, this looks like a pretty fancy apartment building. Gosh, I bet it costs a pretty penny to live here. And this used to be like one of the worst corners in the city. Wow. Pretty nice street now. But I mean, this right here, this is pretty much what it's all about. That kind of person, if you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, now we're coming up on a very interesting bar. You can probably see the sign down here. Atomic Liquor. This is a cool bar. The reason it's called Atomic Liquors is, I guess back in the day when they used to detonate those nuclear bomb tests at the test site up, oh, it's only like an hour north of town. Well, you could see the mushroom cloud very clearly across the desert, and so people used to come to this bar and sit on the roof and watch the explosions or something. Okay, now we're at 10th Street, and this is kind of where seedy Vegas begins. I mean, this poor guy here's not wearing any pants, sitting in a wheelchair. Just behind us, you know, there's all these trendy bars and like all those hipsters living in the nice apartments. Well, guess who's their neighbor? This poor guy. This is where that trailer park used to be that Tony Shea lived in. And this is why I guess why I'm coming off as so salty about Tony Shea. They had this little trailer park in this open lot here. And I think it was just like a busted old trailer park where poor people were living until he bought it and then cleaned all the poor people out. And he installed all these Airstream trailers. You know those really fancy silver Airstream trailers? Well, he got a bunch of brand new Airstreams and parked them all in there around like a central courtyard, and him and all his buddies lived there, and they had a little fire pit, and they had a llama running around, and a bar, and it certainly wasn't a trailer park as you would think of a trailer park. First of all, you had to know somebody to get in. Secondly, you had to be rich to get in. Well, I got in once because somebody invited me to a party there, and it was so creepy, man. It felt like I was in Jonestown. I'm not gonna exaggerate here. If you remember Jim Jones and Jonestown, well, that's how Tony Shea struck me. I mean, him and all his little hipster friends that lived with him, they all drank what he drank and did what he did and ate what he ate, and it was just like being in a cult, and being at that trailer park was like being at cult headquarters. I didn't like it, and so I really take issue with the fact when people go, oh, he was so humble, he lived in a trailer park. Well, it wasn't a real trailer park. Take my word for it. All right, anyway, end of rant. We're coming out of the hipster part of town anyway, and into the really interesting part of Fremont Street. Okay, hang on. I just ran into this guy here. What's your name?
My name is Curtis Wilson.
Okay, Curtis, hold on. Curtis has something he wants to say to an audience.
Mayor, city councilman, I want y'all to know there's some homeless people. We need our jobs. We need to go to work. And what we need you to do is fast track our ID. Every Friday, every Saturday, you take, 50 people or 100 people, and we get our IDs. We can't get work because we don't have IDs, and that's the problem. We can't get on this experience if we ain't got an ID. We need your help.
Okay, wait, so basically what you're saying is you can't get a job without an ID?
Right.
And
you can't work through temp service.
And you can't even go to Fremont Street without an ID?
No.
They won't let you in there?
Not at 8 o'clock.
Really?
Yeah.
And so the way to get an ID is you have to go to the DMV.
Right. I got my birth certificate, my social security card, but I got an appointment way next, like a month from now. I need my ID now.
So you need your ID to do anything in this day and age. So what are you doing now? Why do you have a broom?
Well, I'm hoping to keep this block, this area clean, and hopefully Acme or these businesses will come together and say, hey, let's put some money together for Curtis so he can get on the street.
So to pay you and people like you to just keep the area tidy?
Yes.
That's all you're asking?
Yes, and also we need porta potty stations.
Porta potty?
Yeah, because listen.
Yeah. Otherwise people are just pee and poop everywhere.
That's right. So see, you have the homeless, they man those. They clean them after every use, just like California.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
No, for sure,
It's simple. We live in the greatest country in the world. Why can't we solve this problem?
He's not wrong. There's more money in this country than anywhere. Why can't we get a few porta potties?
That's what
and it's not like you just want to sit around drinking all day. You want to work.
That's it.
Yeah, I mean, look, you take care of yourself. You can see. He's got a broom. Look. Okay, Mayor Goodman, if you're watching this.
I'm your man. We need some work. Please help us.
Curtis just said he's been sleeping in his friend's backyard, and it's cold right now. It gets down to the 30s at night. And he doesn't even have a sleeping bag, okay? He just has a couple blankets. So if anybody in Vegas has an extra sleeping bag they want to give him, he goes by Beaumont. That's his nickname because he's from Beaumont, Texas. And you can find him down here at the 11th Street Market. I'll shoot a video of it. On Fremont Street. So if you happen to be watching this, you're in Vegas, you have an extra sleeping bag that you want to help Curtis out with, bring it down there.
Please help me.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, and God bless y'all.
Okay, wow, that poor guy, man. I'll show you this market up here. Seriously, if anyone watching this wants to help this dude out, I know a lot of times homeless people will tell you a sob story, but he seemed genuine. Okay, this is what's really interesting about this part of town. There's all these friggin' hipsters sitting in this alley eating $30 pizza. And then there's this record store, who buys records anymore? Right down the street from this 11th Street Market where this homeless guy hangs out. That's what's going on here. Oh, this is actually kind of interesting over here. Look at this. This was one of these really gross old crack motels that they turned into some kind of like little hipster stores and restaurants and boutiques. I think every room is like a different store. But look at that cool statue in the yard there. That's from Burning Man. It's called Big Rig Jig. And they actually took two big rigs and stacked them like that, one on top of each other. I think that's pretty cool. Just catty corner from the old Big Rig Jig is this family foods market. You can see on the front it says, we accept food stamps. You can also see they have slot machines. If that's not classic Vegas, I don't know what is. Anyway, this is the market where you can find Beaumont, aka Curtis, and leave a sleeping bag for him. Okay, here's where, to me, the really interesting part of Fremont Street begins. This was nothing but motels back in the day. And I guess originally they were nice little motels that families would stay at. But over the years, they became frankly pretty janky. But now I guess things kind of came full circle and all these hipsters are buying them up and turning them into, well, whatever that was, a bunch of little restaurants and boutiques. Like, look at this. I mean, this was the Travelers Motel back in the day. Look what's in the courtyard now. I think this is a car from Burning Man. Oh yeah, I think I've actually been inside this car at Burning Man. It's called the Never Was Hall, I think. It's pretty cool. I don't know if you can see, but in the front there's a little captain's wheel like from a ship, and I think it actually drives. You can drive that thing around. Little Victorian house on wheels. Parked in the middle of this motel in downtown Vegas. But down here, this was like nothing but creepy, crusty old motels. No visitors allowed after 10 p.m. I guess that was to discourage prostitution. But look, this one's still boarded up, and it's so creepy how they do that. They board them up with plywood, but the plywood is painted to look like doors and windows. I just think that's so creepy. And the windows have lights coming from inside. I feel like that's even creepier than just plain plywood. Oh, here's another closed motel. This one was called the Gables. Welcome. Nice rooms. Man, all these boarded up motels, which are probably pretty decent rooms inside, and meanwhile Curtis is freezing his ass off in his friend's backyard wrapped in 2 blankets. How does this world make any sense? And to be honest, yeah, I know homeless people do make a mess and crap all over everything, but it's like he said, they need porta potties, you know? Where are they supposed to go? Like, I'll be honest, I gotta pee right now, and there's nowhere here to do it. You know, I left the casino district, so I either gotta hold it till I get home or go find an alleyway somewhere. They really make it hard to go to the bathroom in this country. Okay, now we're coming into the part of Fremont Street where it's all motels that people are actually living in and not just on vacation. I mean, look at this one, South Cove Apartments. They even have, oh, first of all, they have vacancies, monthly or weekly, pool, phones, color TV, satellite TV, and slots. They even have slot machines at this motel. Okay, now we're coming up to a motel that has a really interesting backstory. The Desert Moon Motel. Okay, what's interesting about this motel, the Desert Moon, is, I don't know if this is still the case, but I did a photo shoot here back in, oh man, it was probably 2013, maybe it's about 7 years ago, maybe 8 years ago. And at that time, this hotel had a very unique distinction out of all the motels in Vegas. When I did the shoot here, this motel was famous for having free 24-hour pornography on the television. That's right, you could watch adult movies for free 24 hours a day with renting a room. And the rooms were only like 60 bucks a night. It's cheap. I guess that's some kind of special license they had. Apparently there's some weird regulations regarding XXX adult movies. And so this motel here, I think, was the only motel in Las Vegas that had that license to allow free XXX movies to be shown with the room. Uh-oh, look over here. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cop cars and a little toddler trying to get out of that fence. Yikes, what's going on? Oh no, there's a bunch of little kids running around. Oh no, I hope they're not abandoned orphan kids living in that abandoned motel. That'd be creepy. Oh, I don't know why this many cops would show up though. Oh, they got some guy detained. Yikes. Looks like it's an old abandoned car dealership, DC Motors. Just for reference, this is like 3 blocks from where all those hipsters were eating the $30 pizza, and like 5 blocks from where Tony Shea lived in his trailer park. I mean, it's a perfect illustration of the income disparity in the country as a whole and in this city in particular. I mean, you come to Vegas, you see the Bellagio, oh, it's so nice here in Vegas. This is the reality, okay? I mean, this is the part of town we're in. There's a place here where you can sell your plasma to get by. Oh no, look. That's, terrible. Just as terrible as this plasma situation. I mean, what kind of a world do poor people have to sell their body parts, basically, just to get food? And yeah, sure, I know a lot of them buy cigarettes and alcohol and drugs and things that aren't good for them. But, I don't know, there's still something really kind of grisly about selling your plasma to get by. And then who's the beneficiary of the plasma? You know, some rich person goes to the hospital, needs a transfusion. Ugh, what a world we live in. Okay, wow, man, I really hope those little kids are okay, and whatever that guy's being arrested for, I hope it wasn't any kind of child abuse or anything. But what's wild is all of this used to be little motels that vacationing families would come stay in. It wasn't this seedy at all back in the 60s, 70s, maybe even 80s. I don't know when Fremont Street started to become the bad part of town, but man, I'm sure some of you watching this might remember coming to Fremont Street, coming to Las Vegas and staying in a motel on Fremont Street and it being no big deal at all. Whew. Okay, well, we've come to basically the end of the interesting part of Fremont Street. There's only one more, well, I was gonna say one more motel, but the motel itself isn't even here anymore, and that is the Blue Angel Motel. But what was really cool about this motel, and it was still standing when I moved to Vegas, so I actually remember this, on the roof of this motel, they had this giant blue angel standing there. Hopefully you can make out her creepy facial features. That creepy blue angel loomed over all of this part of Vegas. Kind of like this, well, slightly creepy but weirdly benevolent spirit. You know, this is, let's face it, this is a rough part of town. You know, people are just barely getting by, but I don't know, there was something weirdly heartening about looking up into the sky and seeing this friggin' blue angel, who I think was modeled after the blue fairy in Pinocchio. You know, she's kind of like looking out for everybody. So when they tore the motel down, it was like, oh great, here we go again. Another motel getting torn down and turned into a $30 pizza parlor. Well, no, they didn't. I don't know what, the Arts Commission or something bought the statue and kept it right here at the site where the motel used to be. So she's still here looking out over the same busted, rough, lonely people, the poor and ragged people, so to speak. That's cool in my book. You know what I mean? Like, Vegas isn't known for preserving its history. We're known for just blowing stuff up, tearing stuff down, and starting fresh. So I think it's cool that they actually did save that Blue Angel and keep her at her original location, which happens to be a very, very interesting intersection. This was the site of the very first resort hotel casino in all of Las Vegas. Now, all that's here is a Pepe's Tacos, but the swankiest place in town, I think in the early 1930s, I think it opened in 1931, was right here. Well, now it's a big strip mall. It's a LV.net internet service provider, and then there's a big Lowe's hardware store. Well, where that Lowe's is was the site of the first resort. I mean, there was obviously that first hotel. We already walked by the Golden Gate where the first hotel in town was. This was the first resort hotel. Before the Strip, before Bugsy Siegel came out here and built the Flamingo, there was a big resort hotel there called the Meadows. Well, it was called the Meadows Hotel Casino, and then it became known as the Meadows Club. I think it opened in 1931, and it got a gaming license. Gambling was officially legalized here in 1931, and so it got one of the first gaming licenses. It had a casino, a lounge, entertainment. Then it ran into trouble because it had a floor show with a fan dance. You know what that was back in the day, where they had the nude woman had that big feather fan hiding her nudity, and I guess she would like open the fan and give you a peek here and there. Well, that was a big no-no back in those days, and well, the hotel, lounge, casino ran into problems. I think the casino got shut down because of it. And eventually, well, guess what? It ended up becoming a brothel. And then I think it burned down after that. And well, they paved paradise and put in a hardware store. I'm just gonna end my little tour of Fremont here at that Pepe's Tacos that we passed. Asada fries. Yum! Got my fries. Now I'm gonna head home and eat them at home. Hey, pretty. Yummy! Look at that. Man, I just walked a total of 5 miles, but it feels like I walked across 3 continents and 4 decades. I earned this.